Chapter 2 Who's Ooze November 26th, 1993 in Rothelec. Doggy rode like the wind, trying to follow King and Scontach, but kept enough distance apart so they would not know. Purebred steeds were racing at 60 miles per hour, markedly quicker than any horse in Nick's world. As Doggy passed by the lush green meadows, he was reminded of his past. He watched as King and Scontach disappeared in bushes far in the distance. It seemed an unusual place to turn into, just enough time to lose him. "I think we're being followed back there. They won't get too far," King said. Over the brow of a hill, a soldier in all-metal gear and a helmet bearing red feathers stopped by them. "King, you shouldn't be here," said the man, speaking through his helmet. "Thomas is fine. Your son is at my place. You should be back in time to see him," King reassured. The man kicked his horse back into action and left the scene. King continued his journey, approaching menacing thorns that twisted into evil faces, and finally, the very pinnacle of the Valley of the Prickly Thorn. "He's getting away. You must not lose him." As the mucky green blob spoke, the sounds of sludge came with it. A man dressed in the same armor ran down the winding steps of wooden planks. He jumped on a horse tied up outside. Through the loud commotion of armored men and miniature blobs attacking one another, he slipped away, leaving the scene behind, and approached the hill. The man with the red-feathered helmet came riding by, only this time towards him, unlocking his helmet and revealing his face. He spoke in a worried tone and sounded out of breath. "Have you seen my son? He rode by here." There was a pause where the reply should have been. The man looked lost for words. "Yes. You must go quickly. He's gone up in the tower, and Ooze is coming," came the false reply. The feathered helmet man raced to the tower. "Silas, you are no longer in charge," King demanded to a group of 3 armored men on horse, one a little more in command. 2 men moved to King's side that had previously been pushing big floodlights on wheels away from the scene. "Well, that's interesting. Moments ago they were content on serving me," Silence remarked. "They are wise. You know I hold no grudges. You may too be forgiven if you follow me." "And where have you been all this time? I will take care of this myself. These lights are a waste of our precious time." Silas kicked his horse that hurried to the thorns. "These lights must surround the tower. Let's move," King finished. Now stood up in the pinnacle of the tower. All was quiet. The evil-looking thorns blocked most of the natural light outside that was emerging into darkness. 2 fluorescent green eyes began to glow above, as if they were floating. "You are a fool to come up here," the voice called, following a sludge-like sound. It was clear there was no Doggy, and even clearer, Thomas Brown was in a lot of danger. Ooze emitted a green blob that narrowly missed Thomas as he moved out of the way. Instead, it clung to the thorns and ate it away like acid. It destroyed a patch within seconds, allowing light to seep through. Ooze flinched, still perched above in a thorn-made balcony. An armored soldier ran up to King on his way to the thorns. "You must come quickly. Silas has threatened to burn the tower down." "A soldier is trapped up there." King hurried to the tower that came into view. The flames and fumes grew higher at the thorns. "I want the fire services here now!" King ordered. Scontach came out from the big crowd and walked over to King. "I contacted the fire service. It's all been taken care of," Scarecrow confirmed. King grabbed Silas as he attempted to flee. "Look what you've done. Watch this!" King turned Silas to the ever-growing fire that he started. "Thomas Brown is in the tower, King," a soldier announced as he approached them. King looked in disbelief, knowing something was not right. Light from the flood lamps poured into the tower. Ooze was even more bothered by it than he'd ever been before. Even his mucky body began to singe. His eyes looked hungrily back at Thomas, as if ready to do his worst. Another green blob was sent in his direction, only this time he had not been so lucky. It had clung to his right arm, and it too was eating away quickly. Of his right arm, everything past the elbow had fallen off, and in that instant Thomas passed out in pain. He fell through the open gap and below. A floodlight from the east side of the tower went dark. Hundreds of little green, ooze-like blobs came scurrying out from the raging fire and into the night. Fire rescue teams were battling the fire that inched its way closer to the tower. All the while, more green blobs fled the tower. One actually stood in the flames, but looked out towards the darkness. and was seemingly unaffected. But it was clear then, all they were affected by was not so much the heat of the fire, but the light it gave off. Then everything King and Thomas thought had been right all along. "My dad is in there!" screamed Doggy, emerging from the crowd of armored men and into King's view. "Get him out of here!" Scontash, "Take Doggy back to home. This is no place for him." Scontash grabbed Doggy and sat him on his horse. They left behind the burning structure and passed a third fire engine on its way to the Thorns. The stranger, who had previously warned Thomas Brown of his missing son, strode his horse around the side of the tower. A floodlight was not working, and lying, unmoving, was Thomas. The man picked up his wallet and looked inside. Something sparked a desperate man who lifted Thomas from the lamp and helped him on his horse before riding away. A green blob was hurled in the spot they once stood. Behind them, looking from the gap above, were two beady green eyes. "The fire's out now. As soon as this is over, we will find your dad," Scontash explained. Doggy's eyes were filled with tears, and Scontash was not so sure he could speak. "I'm not worried about the fire. Ooze poses a greater threat now. I must fix that floodlight." It may have been Doggy's determination, but it felt right for Scontash to turn back with his horse and return to the Thorns. They approached the brow of a hill that gradually gave view to the billowing smoke and eventually the burnt, but still intact Thorns. Doggy went around the side to where the floodlight was not working. Scontash stood back and watched as he began to correct the light. Not even Doggy himself could have expected what happened next. Electricity seemed to pass right through his hands and surge the light until it powered itself. Doggy's eyes were forced to adjust at the sudden contrast of brightness from the flood lamp. Amidst the calling out of voices and the smoke still escalating from the Thorns, Doggy was sure he could hear the cries from Ooze. Slime began to pour from the Thorns above and fall back down on the flood lamp. Scontash grabbed Doggy's shoulder and pulled him away from the slime. The flood lamp began to dissolve and the light went out once again. Doggy looked at his hands. They were shaking, and he could now see the entire Thorns billowing in smoke. Doggy passed out. Paramedics who were on standby at the time came over to the scene. "Is he hurt at all?" one asked as he knelt down by Doggy's side. "No, he passed out only a moment ago," informed King. A medic placed an oxygen mask over Doggy as he was carefully moved to safety. King knew all too well it was not smoke inhalation, but whatever source of energy had been sucked out from him. It would appear a dream if it had not been so real. Voices seemed so distant in King's head. Firefighters tackling the blaze and Doggy motionless on the ground. Hundreds of people frightened for their lives. "He's calling your name, King. Come with us. He is speaking now." King's attention suddenly returned to the situation, and all the hurt and pain he blocked out before came back. "Come with us, King," a paramedic explained. King followed the medics to Doggy, his mask worn loose on his neck so he could speak. He began slowly and uneasy. "King, I'm glad to see you. I want to see my father." "We're doing the best we can. Do not worry, Doggy. We will find him." King stood up and turned to Scontash by his side. "I think it's best we take him back home. This is all a bit much for him." Scontash nodded his head and helped Doggy onto his horse so he was sat upright. "I will see Mrs. Brown in the morning. Apart from that, you must not tell her a thing." Scontash and Doggy left the smoke-consumed tower. The sun had worn out, and the sky was left in darkness. King could only hope Thomas would turn up before the night was over.